All right. Okay, back for another lecture. Uh-oh. All right. One thing I've noticed in life. Do I understand judo? Yeah. I had received expert judo training at some point. Have a problem with the muscle memory idea. So, um, it is there. All of it. All the body disciplining and all that stuff. Like one time I was at this place, I won't mention where it was. Okay, I was hit by a guy, very large man, about 6'8", over the head. Okay, it dropped me to my knees, and did it knock me out? Well, that would have knocked somebody out. But the idea is the martial discipline. I just blinked for a second, black, but not blacked out. That's interesting. You could just hit a blank and not black out, and then your mind just resets. That just takes a lot of mental discipline to get there. Not being beat over the head continuously. That just causes brain damage, right? Okay. But the point is, I was able to jump up immediately within a second after being driven down to my knees by force through a forearm over my head. Right? So the concept of martial discipline is accustoming your mind to stress, and most importantly, pain. Is that true though? Is accustoming yourself to pain better than stress? Yeah. Okay, body stress is one thing, but pain regulation is another. In combat, pain regulation is more important than being able to run a marathon. If you can run a marathon, hey, that's great, man. you know, so the lecture is for civilians. Just going to judo classes, even a wrestling class makes sense. Like if I was a parent, would I take my children early on and make sure that they had padded floors, everything's padded, right? Gloves that are padded. If they're young enough, they're not even having contact with anything other than a soft bag, and they're not trying to beat a hole into the bag either. You always exercise strength because that small developing person, their tendons are not fully formed. I got a car coming through. They beat into a hard surface. It's going to break down the tendons in their wrists, cartilage, maybe cause muscle strain, crack bones, all sorts of things. The idea is, people that know what they're doing should be teaching martial arts, whether it be wrestling or grappling or striking. It'd be better off for children to learn to start with wrestling first, then move to grappling, and then striking later on. Oh yeah, that is the process right there. Well, the steps, 3 steps, right? Okay, so let's see here. I lost my place just for a second here. I'm kind of deep in thought. Uh, does martial arts discipline equate to an improved life? Yeah, I'm going to say that is an absolute of life. That when it comes to the person, you know, it's not all just an existential game, just a matter of being an intellectual. You know, we have a brain, but we also have this body, and having prowess, physical prowess, makes a big difference in life to children. You know, they don't have the intellectual capacity as yet, so they need the physicality of life. You know, so uh, you know, playing games. You know, mental exercise games, uh, language skills, math skills, science, flashcards, man. Just buying flashcards for your kids. And I got this app for Spanish. It's flashcards. It's great, man. It's like $3.99. Buys the entire program. It's flashcards that go through every topic you can think of. You know, yeah, I say I care about people. You know, ethics, honesty, and caring. I believe those are the staples of life, right? Of being a good person. So, yeah, I want to have a lecture, and then maybe inspire some debate. It shouldn't really. I mean, if you're going to do well for your children, you know, find things online that are free. You know, I've been looking online for a long time. You know, when we had BBS, dial-up modem. You know, people were garnering knowledge and putting that on BBSs before the internet was invented. So there's really no argument, you know. Uh, so intellectual or mental prowess, along with physical prowess, you know, I can't see how that can be beat. You know, I say don't wait for schools to come up with a program. You know, is there some physical activity your children can be involved in that requires just little money or no money? Let's see here. Let's go through some of them. Okay, you go down to Walmart or Kmart, Target, and buy your child or children uh, a relatively cheap pair of inline skates. You can give them, one of those, buy a cheap hockey stick, one of those ones they use for play. They're kind of wide and tall. Yeah. And a cheap rubber ball. Well, that's not too expensive. And then you can just set up some type of barrier. I suppose you can invest in some type of nets. You only have to invest in them once. I mean, whether they going to wreck them somehow? Not really. I mean, that's if your child starts out at 5 years old playing street hockey, a up until the time they leave the house. Oh, who knows? Say they leave the house when they're 18, right? Well, that's 13 years. You've invested like maybe a few $100s, way back when. But of course, inline skates, growing feet, well, of course. But yeah, you know, I suppose you can say a child's hockey stick, but I don't know about that one. I think a kid would use a regulation size hockey stick, and just short stick it like a baseball bat. Let's see here. Ping pong, man. Talk about visual acuity. I mean, their visual acuity makes video game players look sad. Just sad. Imagine having to keep your eye on a ball that's white. What is that, moving like 40 miles an hour across the table? Maybe 30. I'm not sure, but yeah. 30 miles an hour. And then hitting it with a wooden pellet so that it goes over the net and lands, on the other player's side of the table. I'm not clear on all the terminology. That's not necessary. The idea is, you set up a ping pong table, and now your kids are have dexterity, visual acuity. They go outside, they gain agility. Now imagine all these different words that define different things, define different types of physicality. Yeah, agility, dexterity, acuity. And there's another one. It's kind of like like basketball. It's called swiftness, the ability to churn in on the arc and negotiate something. That's kind of like moving sideways, moving in a circle, or turning in place. Yeah, there must be a clinical word for that, but yeah, it all goes back to martial discipline. Martial discipline is self-defense, right? But it's still physical discipline. So so like inline skating, ping pong. Wow, for your average family, that's not a whole lot of dough. So, I'm here to lecture, and I don't give a shit if I don't have, because it doesn't matter. I've been around enough people to know, what the winning strategy is. I'm kind of doubting myself a little bit here. Okay, so the winning strategies for people are physicality and intellectualism, right? Not going overboard, hurting yourself, but just, getting up out of your seat and moving, right? And the reason why I come off so direct, sometimes forceful, is, I look around, it's like, people actually, getting out of their house, demanding their kids get out of the house and play rather than, watch television. Playing video games, it's interactive, but it is still television viewing. It's still that setup right there that you're programming to a preset. So the game is a preset. You can't go out of the rules of the game, right? So It's along the same lines of television. You can't, unless you want to imagine yourself in the situation. That's great if you could, but that's not exactly what they're trying to get at with television. You sit there and you're entertained, right? So, let's see, an easy one. Badminton. That used to be very popular. You know, I played that as a kid. It's like, what is this? It looks kind of cheap. Well, it is cheap. It's just a plastic net, and you drive two slim pieces of aluminum into the ground. They have a point on them. They stake into the ground, and then you can take it down if you want, but you're not really. Unless you're gonna play another game or something. But yeah, I mean that badminton. You know, it has acuity. You have to be swift, agile, dexterous, and did I say acuity? Yeah, has all of that, all put into one, all within a space that, if you had a backyard, you could play badminton. Really, you know. These are just ideas that I've garnered over life and wish to express. I do say that because I realize there's some people listening that are, you know, they're probably looking for a reason to poke holes in anything, really. Especially a person that has opinions such as mine. Let's see here. So yeah, 3. Inline skating, ping pong. Would you play against the wall? Also, you play against yourself. Interesting. And badminton, real easy. If you have little ones, lawn golf. What was that called again? I used to play it over my grandmother's house. With the mallet and the you go through posts, hoops. What was that called? Oh wow, I can't remember anymore. Oh, that's a great one for youngsters. Marbles. Marbles can be really difficult. So those are the things that we were doing because we didn't have cable. And we didn't have a lot of money. So we did things that were cheap, yeah, but then we realized that those are some of the best things you could possibly do anyhow. Play a game of marbles. Play some ping pong. Get outside with some roller skates. On and on and on. Things like that. Just simple games, right? Memory games. Word games, word exercises, memory exercises, mnemonics, you have the internet, so that's just like gravy. That doesn't replace mental prowess or physical prowess, by playing video games or just merely looking up something on the internet and copying it down onto your term paper. And just kind of changing things around so it doesn't seem like you're plagiarizing. I think that's happening way, way too much. Wow. Okay, I've done that myself, but I knew how to do it very well. It's like I was being lazy, and I'd go to the encyclopedia and get all the information and then just spit it all out. in some very loose way that sounded like it was just me kind of speaking, like I'm just sort of, I don't know, what would be the word for that? Uh, Offhand, you know. I'm just saying something, well, just kind of from the heart, kind of offhand, but it was a deception because, I didn't want to do the work. So I just looked it up in the encyclopedia and wrote it down on a piece of paper. I didn't say why I personally thought that, this is why this works, or have any personal thoughts on that issue. And but in a lot of schools, that's kind of the name of the game. Anyhow, I have a more serious discussion about martial discipline. But do I think that we should be a nation of people who know how to defend themselves personally in what we call in melee, which is, hand-to-hand combat? Someone comes up to you and says, give me your money, and they, try to strike you. What do? Well, we're a nation of people that would not know what to do if that happened. All we know how to do is run away, maybe get our ass beat, and then call the cops. Alright? So, I think that should change. Of course, I believe in corporal discipline. Do I believe that parents should be able to give their permission to a specialized disciplinarian at school that can administer physical punishment? Yeah. I think that's part of life right there. I have not seen otherwise anything to suggest that that is not part of life. Discipline, corporal punishment in schools, these ideas that people were, destroyed by being spanked in school by the disciplinarian. I understand mental abuse and physical abuse. That's not mental or physical abuse. That's stopping aberrant behavior. These people are phony baloney. They play it up for the media, and people eat it up whole. They're just putting some emotional bait out for people to get them to believe that there should be no discipline. Is that part of the communist agenda? It's interesting. It all comes back full circle. You may think I'm just a nut that talks about communism like it's like they're all around us, but it's true. The purpose for people to say that a parent can never put their hands on a child is this idea it's like a proxy state for them. These are cowardly people, these elitists. Like AOC talks about rent control, but she doesn't know one damn thing about rent control. But then she goes on and talks about her upscale apartment building where she lives that has all the amenities of life. She says, well, yeah, but then people should have all that stuff. Well, but no. What people should have is, all the basics and then rent control. Well, okay, if you're going to make that argument, there's a whole argument for rent control, if you really want to make that argument. But that's not the idea. The idea is this is a cowardly person who would say, well, you can't touch your child as far as beating them. And yeah, it is beating. It really is. With a belt. Not your hand, a belt. So, that's just a proxy state for their fear. They fear discipline themselves. They're undisciplined. They're not willing to discipline their mind. They engage in extreme rationale and power lust. It's just all this big bag of emotion and crazy thought, So that's why I say that there are scientific standards for life. There's absolutes for life. Traditional values are not necessarily bad just because they're also in the Bible, but there's also billions of people who also feel the same way that don't believe in the Bible or believe in Buddhism or whatever religion they may believe in, that it's polytheistic. They have thousands of gods rather than one. So how does that work, that they have a lot of the same traditional values? Well, it's just born out of logic, really, and examination of life and the terms of life, right? And using logic, they've come to these conclusions, right? So, my conclusions is, a nation of martial discipline foments a nation of mental discipline. And I think that's irrefutable. So imagine if these countries that understand this, because it's born through their religion, they're doing that and we're not doing that. So are we going to eventually slip down the drain? Go further and further in the mire? While these countries progress ahead of us, they are physically and mentally fit, while we are not. I think that's an absolute also. Yes, that's the truth. So, something to think about. Are your children receiving, corporal discipline when it's absolutely necessary, when you've run the gamut with them, and there's no other choice? Are they involved in games, simple games that they can do for themselves with neighbor kids? Not necessarily having to go to big schools, and not big schools, but these big programs set up for kids. I understand some places kids can't get outside too much, Inner cities, yeah. But then I've lived in some places, and that's not exactly true. But cars and things. Cars driving by at all times, even during the night. In some big cities, it's just there's just streets, and it's like between those streets are huge high rises, right, and low rises, and people live there. It's basically like living in prison. Roadways and apartment buildings. That's really no way to live, is it? Now, what can be done about living in these large cities? It's an impossible. It's an impossible. Yeah, it's an impossible situation. They just have to be broken up. We have to have put limits on how big a city can be, and how much park space we have to apartment space. How many apartments can you have in one place before it becomes a prison? Yeah, I mean, there's so much involved with being active. I mean, running, jogging in the city. That's another one I forgot to talk about. But yeah, just jogging or buying a incline. Those Norditracks, those old Norditracks that look like a ski machine. Oh, those are wonderful. Those do a great job. Those are really helpful. I really appreciate those. And a rowing machine. Rowing machines are wonderful. I mean, if you can afford such things, or go to a low-cost gym that has things like that. Medicine balls, we can roll around with a medicine ball. That's extraordinary stress on the body right there. 10 minutes of that is worth an hour of jogging. But anyhow, thanks for listening.